Hello everybody, this is Connor, Boats Don't Sink, here with Iron City Games. Today we had the release of hololive production in English. We only had the trial decks released today, so I'm only going to be talking about the trial decks, but man have I been waiting for this set. I am excited for the full booster in 2 weeks, and I have been dying just to play with these trial deck cards. So today, I am going to tell you guys about some of my favorite cards from the trial decks. Overall, there are 7 different seven different trial decks that released 127 total cards between them. There's about 18 to 19 cards in each trial deck. And today I'm going to pick out my top 10. This is normally what I do for, a full booster plus trial deck. But since these trial decks alone are really more cards than a normal set plus trial deck has to begin with, we're going to do 10 for the trial decks, and then in 2 weeks we'll do 10 for the booster. Before I hop in, I want to remind everyone you can check out ironcitygames.tcgplayerpro.com to pick up any singles that you want for White Shorts. We have pretty much everything you can imagine that's come out recently, and we will also be putting hololive singles up on there as well. So check that out, get your singles, pre-order playsets, etc. Without further ado, my number 10 card from the trial decks is Getting Excited for Spring, Momosuzu Nene. This is a 00500 from the 5th generation trial deck. First effect is, when this card is placed on the stage from your hand, you may pay 1, put 1 card from your hand into your waiting room. If you do, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 1 card from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest into your waiting room. This is an effect we've seen a lot, lets you add events, climaxes, etc. Second effect is, when this card becomes reversed in battle, if your memory has 2 or less cards, you may put this card into your memory. So we've actually seen, both of these effects have seen play separately in the past, as sort of just, the first effect being more of a utility effect, helps you find your climaxes, get consistency there. It's notably good in decks that play events, since it can add events to hand. Bang Dream played it for Irritating Girl event, the Buns for Luck event, etc. And the second effect we've not seen a whole lot outside of decks that require memory. Obviously the Pyrrha from Ruby has this effect, but is required in memory for the Ruby level 3 combo. Fate, however, did play Shiro. This card was a level 0 stock bomb that, when it becomes reversed, has the same effect to go to memory. And that card saw play as just an early game attacker that, once it did its job, could just go to memory and it wouldn't be a dead card that you draw later. So this Nene can play in a similar manner, where going into level 1 you can use this to help give you extra consistency on finding your climax off the top 3 for your level 1 combo, and then once it gets reversed it just goes to memory because you're probably not going to need it as much for the rest of the game. However, it is worth noting as well that the 5th generation deck from the booster mainly does actually have cards that require memory. They check for the number of cards with different card names you have in memory, so this does provide you 1 additional card to go to memory for that. Overall though, even just with trial decks right now, I think this card is a cool card to be playing like 2 copies of, because it can help you with consistency in the early game and isn't something you're going to be drawing dead late game. So, like this card a lot. Moving into my number 9 card, we actually have a card that I think some people have considered a bit of a meme. We have Summer Vacation Akai Hato. This is a 3/2 10/5 strange printed power. During the turn that this card is placed on the stage from your hand, at the beginning of your attack phase, you may put all players' characters except this card into their waiting rooms. If you do, this card gets the following ability until end of turn. This ability activates up to 1 time per turn. When damage dealt by this card is cancelled, you may deal 3 damage to your opponent. Second effect is, on attack, you can pay 2, discard 2, deal 2 damage. So, it's a board wipe. Generally, so since this also wipes your own board, right, you're only getting this 1 attack. You're effectively getting, on attack, deal damage, attack deals damage, and then you have a cancel burn on both of them. It's still worse than just getting 3 attacks. So Generally, this is going to be worse than just playing some tech card to bounce one of your opponent's characters to hand, or something like that, which hololive does have ways to just single target removal on board. But against boards of multiple characters that all need answering, this card can be pretty decent. One of the main things I'd be looking at is Seven Deadly Sins, a card that, or a set that doesn't exist in Japanese, so the Hachama level 3 here has not been needed as sort of a tech in Japanese because of that. But maybe it's a card to play, especially with Seven Deadly Sins getting a second set coming up. Meliodas might see a lot of play. We don't know yet for sure, but being hexproof and anti-burn and deals damage back to you, it's something that's high priority to remove every lane of this Meliodas, right? And Hachima can do that pretty efficiently and still get you damage through. Other things like minus soul boards, they're not really super popular right now. hololive will be introducing another minus soul deck with the Sora level 3. Unfortunately, due to the timing of this effect, you're still going to get hit by the minus soul most of the time, but you get a direct attack, you might still be able to push a little bit of damage and answer multiple lanes of your opponent's board at the same time. Even against standby decks, if they've established a pretty strong standby board but don't have very much hand, which is something that can happen with those decks quite often, being able to just blow up their board all at once and sort of sandbag a turn, they might not be able to rebuild, and it might put you in a pretty good position, especially since those decks do often rely on counter step, and obviously if they don't have a board, you get to turn off their counters, so Mushoku Tensei doesn't get to rest counter you, etc. So overall, a card that, I wouldn't focus on heavily, but if you're in yellow at to any point, you can play one copy, and it's probably pretty decent in some matchups. My number 8, I have a card that I honestly didn't think I'd ever be putting on one of these lists, but So Busy, Usada Pekora. When this card attacks, choose one of your other hololive characters. That character gets plus 2,000 power until end of turn. At the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, you may pay 1. If you do, move this card to an open position of your backstage. This is an exact copy of a card that Kaguya-sama originally did not play, but has started playing with the restriction of the K level 0, Escaping from Reality U. I never really thought a whole lot of this card until I was forced to play 4 copies of it in Kaguya, and have absolutely fallen in love with this profile, actually. Pay 1 as a runner is a little unfortunate. It is resource heavy. You need to be playing a level 1 game that doesn't need those resources so that you can put them into your level 0 pluses. But being a guaranteed, it's always going to live. It doesn't lose to tri-fields like runners do. And the 2,000 power pump is very relevant. It helps you get over oversizes at 0 when you transition into level 1, especially if you have on-reverse combos, which Kaguya-sama, their main level 1 combo, does need to reverse and only has 5,500 power. Funnily enough, hololive here has essentially the same combo on a Miko level 1 in the booster, 5,500 power standby combos, on reverse salvage instead of search. Same principle though, the 2,000 power boost can really help you get those reverses. And even if you're playing a higher power level 1 combo, 2,000 power can help you get over standby targets, it can help you just guarantee reverses through counters. And if you play this Pekora at level 0, you can attack with it, pay 1, move to backstage, push it back up. It was guaranteed to live a turn, so you get to plus off of it and then carry that power pump into your level 1 game to help you there. So I really like this card. I think it has a lot of synergy with a lot of the cards in the set. I think even moving into the later stages of the game, being able to pump 2,000 power into an early play or something to beat over standby boards is still very relevant, especially with Mushoku Tensei being a huge portion of the metagame right now. I think this Pekora is a card that is useful at all stages of the game, so I really like it. It's my number 8 card. I honestly consider putting it even a little higher on this list. Moving into my number 7, we have Surrendering to Crucifixion Inugami Korone. This card is another level 0. The character facing this card cannot move to another position of the stage, and if your hand has 5 or more cards, this card gets plus 2,000 power. So that's a power condition that we've actually seen on a few cards, most recently the Talent for Magic Rudius 3,500 Center Runner. This is basically the exact opposite of Rudius, right? Instead of being a runner, it is an anti-runner. Unfortunate part of this is that it is 3,500, which means it ties most of the popular runners right now. So it does stop them from doing their running thing, but oftentimes you might have to crash into them to reverse them. Sometimes that's fine though, right? If your opponent opens up and they just play their runner and you play your 35 and like something else, crash into their 35 runner, get rid of it. They might not have good follow-ups, especially if the other thing you played is like an on-death clock costed plus or something like that. You can be in a pretty good position. However, hololive does have a number of ways to pump power, either through assists or global power or things like the Pekora that I just talked about, where you can pump 2,000 power. If your opponent, opens Millum or Rudius or something like that, and you can open Coronet plus Pekora, you get to swing, pump your Coronet up to 5,500, reverse their runner, and now you have a back row runner that's guaranteed to live, and you have a 3,500 in your front row that is probably going to live unless they, commit another oversize into probably crashing into it. So I think this card can give you some really powerful opening plays that also beat some of the other really strong decks right now. As we know, Mushoku Tensei itself splashes into the box topper promo Rudius just to deal with these similar openers. So I think Coronet being honestly probably a little something you can justify running higher quantities of than the box topper as a plussing opener. If you go first, even being 3,500, makes it a pretty good card. Something I also want to mention, even though it's not as relevant now, I was considering playing this card prior to the Data Live restriction, just because of the anti-runner effect on a 3,500 body, because that beats Yoshino. Yoshino being a field swapper means that, if you have Coronet in front of it, it can't field swap, because it can't move to another position of the stage. And it's only 3,500 power, so if your opponent had a front row Yoshino and you played like an early play or something, and they were going to field swap in front of your early play, now they can't, and they can't beat over your Coronet with their Yoshino. They have to crash into you. So really cool interaction there. If people are still, on Yoshino choice for their Data Live decks, Coronet is something, keep in mind. You can search it out as an answer to Yoshino or any cards similar that we get in the future. Number 6. This card also has performed a lot better in just testing games than I expected it to. Returning the favorite Murasaki Shion just has one effect. At the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, you may pay 1. If you do, choose one character facing this card and another character in your opponent's center stage and exchange them as stand. So typically these cards, we've seen a number of like 002K like pseudo runners, or like they run your opponent's character to try to keep themselves alive. Those cards typically have not been very good in the past. This card, however, I think is really strong. Being able to not just move but field swap your opponent's characters opens up a lot of potential to just mess with your opponent's numbers and mess with their board state. Some of the first things that come to mind, right? Level 3 killers, cards that get a lot of burst power, or anti-change bombs. If you have an early play on your board, and your opponent tries to play an anti-change bomb or a level 3 killer to get rid of it, and you have this Shion, you can just pay 1 and force the level 3 killer or anti-change bomb in front of Shion, and then it has to kill her, and your early play probably lives. So Shion sacrificing herself for the greater cause is really powerful. This really has applications at every stage of the game, though, not just to protect early plays. I've used it to save level 1 combos. If I go into level 1 and have 2 copies of my combo and a Shion, if my opponent can't answer the level 1 combo in all 3 lanes, Shion gets to save one of them and force the opponent to crash whatever character they had, or side attack. It makes it really easy to keep multiple turns of climax combo going because your characters live. So I really like it for all of that. It's really good at controlling the board. Not a card I would play high quantities of, but a card that I especially like to just have around for the turns where I build a strong board and need to protect it. At number 5, moving into our top half of the cards, I have Mature Flavor, Tsunomaki Watame. Apart from Watame being very cute, this card is really good. Auto, pay 1, put 1 climax from your hand into your waiting room. On play, you may pay the cost. If you do choose a climax in your waiting room, return it to your hand. It's a climax swapper. We love climax swappers. I've gone on record saying I don't want to play any deck in a tournament if it does not have a climax swapper. Climax combos are too powerful right now to not have extra consistency on. Second effect on the card, when damage dealt by this card is cancelled, you may put this card into your stock. Meaning sometimes it's just going to refund, the cost to climax swap. We've actually seen a lot of cards see play, one of which, even the Tsubomi from Mob Psycho, being an exact copy of this card. Though notably, Watame is on trait for the rest of the deck. Tsubomi was off trait. Being able to just go to stock when their damage is cancelled is a really cool effect for a card that you're just playing as sort of a mid-game attacker. Especially in like 1k1 decks where you might not be trying to build up a huge board. You're just trying to build resources into a top end if you have like an explosive finisher. Being able to just play costless characters that sometimes give you extra stock is very powerful, which means you can justify playing sort of large counts of Watame. ReZero Memory Snow notably played 4 copies of Dot Ram in pretty much all of its lists. Because that free stock was just really good for a deck that wanted to just attack 3 times with a climax every turn. So Watame being able to just be an attacker, give you extra resources, and provide extra consistency to your climax combos when you need it, makes her a card that you can justify playing a lot of and has very powerful niche use cases when you need the climax swap. So I really like it. It feels a lot better than a lot of other sets where your climax swapper you might only want to play 1 copy of because it's dead a lot of the time, or you don't always need to climax swap, and they don't have good secondary effects. Some of them better than others. Mushoku Tensei's recently being able to give 1500 power on play, but this is one that you can always play this down as an attacker and not feel bad about it. So really like this card. At number 4 we have Thanks for Waiting, Sakura Miko. This is a 0/0/3500. Continuous, all of your opponent's characters get Auto Encore 2, one of the fakest downsides in the world. And when this card is placed on the stage from your hand, you may pay 1, discard 1, search your deck for up to 1 hololive character, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. It's a drop searcher, and it's a 3500. We have seen these a couple times in the past, very infrequently. Normally drop searchers are not oversizes, or they're only 3000 power. 3500 power drop searches are strong. They have seen play at high quantities in almost every deck that has access to them, both in English and Japanese, and I don't think this Miko is really much different. hololive, having the massive card pool it does, can justify playing other plussing zeros instead. But in general, a 3500, you can play this turn 1, it's an oversize, or you can play it turn 2, search out your level 1 combo. If you're playing 4 copies, you're likely to draw multiples, so you can do both. Play 1 early and then play another one on turn 2 or 3. It just gives you a lot of card advantage and a lot of consistency while being a good turn 1 play. We really like these cards that are very strong early game plays and also retain value throughout the rest of the game. And I think Miko is definitely one of those cards. So very high up on my list. It's a card that, at least for now with the trial decks, I've been playing 4 copies of just always. Once the booster comes out, you can cut some of those for some other cards, but still very strong card. High consideration, for sure. Now, moving into my number 3. You might have noticed we haven't actually seen any climax combos yet in this top 10 list. But I assure you, they are coming. So number 3, I have on the stage Amane Kanata. This is a 3/2 10k on play from hand heal and climax combo at the beginning of your attack phase. If Stay Like This Just for Today is in your climax area, this card is in your center stage, and you have 4 or more other hololive characters. Choose up to 2 hololive characters in your waiting room. Return up to 2 cards from among them to your hand, and put the rest into your stock in any order. So it's basically, you get 2 resources, and you can choose whether they're hand or stock for both of them. The climax is a green level 1 or lower stock soul. so it is easy to splash the color. You don't need a lot of green for your stock soul. It's just level 1 or lower. And being a stock soul actually gives you a lot of resources back. So looking at part of what makes this card so powerful, we have a 2-1 backup, Snooty Amane Kanata. Is a 3,000 power backup, but also has a climax combo with the same climax. When you play the climax, you can sack the 2-1 from your stage to play the 3-2 from your hand. Meaning we can get this 3-2 out at level 2 for 1 stock. It really is 0 stock, right, because of your stock soul. So playing 2 copies of this only requires, or it requires 2 stock, but it's only going to cost you 1 stock, because you will get 1 refunded. At least 1. Your climax combo can refund even more. It is a little bit heavy on hand, because you do have to play the backup from hand and the level 3 from hand alongside the climax. But with the climax combo giving you potentially 2 characters back to hand, you can refill very easily, especially with backups. Obviously, we're already playing probably 3 to 4 copies of this Kanata backup, and once the booster comes out, you get access to even more strong backups, rest counters, anti-change counters, etc. So you can fill your hand with backups to protect your Kanata 3-2 in order to play the climax combo again the following turn. And at that point, you can start building stock since you have a lot of hand, and this builds you into just a strong either compression in-game, high resources if you want to go into a finisher afterwards. You have lots of resources to do that. It really lets you play your top end into whatever you want. As you can see, this rest counter, which I'll talk about more once the booster releases, the cost is discard 4 characters. So, if you just keep salvaging a bunch of characters off of your 3-2 combo, you can keep jamming rest counter every turn, which protects multiple lanes of Kanata, keeps you safe from damage, etc. Lots of powerful synergies, and being a sort of pseudo card advantage combo at level 2, you can sometimes afford to cut level 1 combos and just play this with a finisher. So really strong and really flexible. One downside is that it does require a lot of cards in hand for setup, so that can be a downside to it. But the payoff is there. The payoff is really good. So we like this card a lot. At number 2, we have another climax combo. This one is a 1-0 Birthday Party Inogami Korone. So it's a 1-0 4500 on play from hand. It gets plus 500 power times the number of hololive characters you have. When this card attacks, if Date at the House, which is a choice climax, is in your climax area, and you have another hololive character, choose one of your characters. That character gets the following ability until end of turn. When this card's battle opponent becomes reversed, search your deck for up to 1 hololive character, reveal it to your opponent, put it in your hand, and shuffle. This is similar to some combos that we've seen in the past, notably Choo Choo and Jean. Choo Choo's issue being that she was, kind of small power and only gets to search raise a Suilan. Jean, on the other hand, does see play. It's a very powerful combo, even better than Korone in some ways, and honestly just really strong, right? The ability to search for a selective card is something I really like in climax combos. Nowadays, you see a lot of check top 4, add a card, or mill 2, salvage a level X or lower, where you get a little bit of control over what you're adding to hand, but you don't get complete control. These selective plussing combos, really good. They give you a lot of control, a lot of ways to set up for later in the game. And with Korone being able to give the effect to a character, herself or another character even, you can, even if you only get 1 reverse, you can stack 2 to 3 instances of this effect on that 1 lane, get your 1 reverse, go search 3 characters. So it's hard to shut Korone out of being able to get resources, even against standby decks or against runners. As long as she can find 1 lane, you're good to go. And I think another thing about this being selective, really important in hololive, especially with these trial deck packages, there are a lot of very powerful payoffs that require a lot of specific cards to set up. The Kanata that we already talked about, there's a Subaru in the Gen 2 trial deck and a Rusha in the Gen 3 trial deck. These require 3+ cards to set up these packages. Korone being able to get you the exact card you want makes it a lot more consistent. And as you can see, a lot of these cards have soul triggers, so having a choice trigger as Corone's Climax makes it even better. You can add even more copies of these, or you can work to build stock to pay for these huge packages. So overall, Corone is a combo that obviously Jean has seen play. Corone is in the same vein as Jean. We'll see play in meta builds even far outside the trial deck scope. At number 1, this is probably unsurprising to most people, I have Peaceful Times, Uruha Rushia. So, personally, I am not a fan of Rushia. Cover Corp is also probably not a fan of Rushia right now. But this card is undeniably powerful. If you have 2 or more other hololive characters, this card gets plus 1500 power and Encore. Put a hololive character from your hand into your waiting room. 10-5 with Encore pretty much always. And Climax combo, when always together is placed on your Climax area, if this card is in your center stage and you have another hololive character, choose up to 1 hololive character in your waiting room and return it to your hand or put it on any position of your stage. If you returned it to your hand, choose up to 4 cards in your opponent's waiting room, shuffle them back into their deck. If you place it on stage, it gains 2500 power cross turn. 2 both very powerful options. Either you get to salvage one and get a pseudo finisher effect, or you get to, plus to board, save resources, and it gets a lot of power, so you're going to hopefully win board. Part of what makes this as strong as it is, similar to Kanata, we have a way to bring it out at level 2. The Kind Elf Shiranui Flare is a level assist that also has the effect, if your level is 2 or higher, this gets the following ability. Pay 2, rest this card, and rest one of your Relationship War Shirogane Noel, which is the Brainstorm. Choose up to 1 Peaceful Times Uruha Rushia in your hand, put it on any position of your stage. You can only bring out, realistically, 1 per turn using this method, since you do have to rest both of your back row characters. So you can't multi-field it as easily as you can some of the other packages from the trial decks, but because of the Climax combo, you essentially get a second level 3 for free on the first turn that you combo. What are you bringing out? Well, typically either another copy of Rushia, since she has Encore. If you can get 2 out, they're very likely to stick, and you can loop combo to start doing even stronger things on the next turn. Or, if you need to heal, you can bring out Captain of Hosho Pirates, Hosho Marine. It's a healer, but it also has the effect that if you play it by Rushia's effect, it heals as well, not just from hand. So both very powerful targets. There are some other level 3s that you can optionally bring out to, have good board presence, but these are the 2 that you're going to be focusing on the most. Generally, what will happen is you play your first Rushia, you play the Climax, you get your second Rushia out off of it. They have Encore, so even if the opponent can get bigger than them, you can just Encore them. On the second turn, you play the Climax again, and that's when you start salvaging. You can salvage generally backups to keep protecting your Rushias, or you can get the rest counter, so now you have defensive plays, and you're shuffling up to 8 cards back into your opponent's deck, even up to 12 if you play a third Rushia, which is huge decompression. If your opponent ever ends on a small deck, like a 2-card deck, 1-card deck with no climaxes in it, and you have multiple Rushias in play, you essentially win the game on the spot. You play the Climax, you're presenting, 8+ damage immediately, maybe even more than that, and you've just shuffled 8 clean cards back into their deck. So you essentially win on the spot if your opponent ever fails to play a round Rushia combo. And if they do play around and you need to have some survivability, you have rest counter, you have anti-change counter, things like that. There's also the cool play with a card I mentioned earlier, Murasaki Shion. If you have Rushias out and you are afraid of anti-change bombs, which are one of the only ways to get around Rushia's Encore effect, you can actually summon Shion to the board in one of your lanes off of combo. So say you have 2 Rushias, you can salvage with one of them and then summon Shion with the other. Shion gaining 2500 power, probably not super relevant. Though, I say that, right? 5000 power is bigger than a lot of anti-change bombs, especially 1/1s. So, it is actually possible that power is relevant. And once your opponent tries to play an anti-change bomb to get rid of your Rushia, you can pay 1 and, pull that anti-change bomb in front of Xion, so that it has to attack her and protects your Ruxia. So you have easy access to this protection just through Ruxia's combo. So we like that a lot. Very powerful. And this card, as I said, it just transitions from being a mid-game wall and advantage engine into also being a finisher. So it really covers your entire level 2 and 3 game just off of this one card. And it's a heavy build around where you can play just a strong game to support specifically this package. And it, in Japan, did end up being, for quite a while, one of the most popular builds of the deck. Still sees play, less now that people are starting to, obviously build into ways to answer Ruxia. She is generally a bit smaller than, like standby boards or something like that might be. So if you can get around the Encore, you can answer Ruxia and make it a little harder for the package to work. But still very strong. And in my opinion, the best card to keep your eye out for from all of these trial decks. So quick recap, my top 10 cards from the hololive production trial decks that released today are Ruxia, Korone, Kanata, Miko, Watame, Xion, Korone again. Korone has some good cards. Pekara, Hachama, and Nene. That being said, there are a lot of other powerful cards from these trial decks, especially in packages that work with each other. All of the brainstorms from these trial decks have secondary effects that give a global 1000 power to the trial deck's level 1 combo and level 3 combo, meaning a lot of these level 1 combos, even if they are very generic, say on reverse salvage, have support that gives them very high power lines, helps them answer standby boards or win defensively, which, you have to play a trial deck brainstorm that's just a draw brainstorm, but it could give you an advantage over the rest of the field by doing so. And, a lot of these decks, if you're playing the Ruxia deck, you're playing that trial deck brainstorm for the package. If you're playing Kanata, you're probably playing the trial deck brainstorm just because it gives her another 1000 power. So these packages are worth looking at. All of the level 1 combos, for the most part, are very playable. Most of the level 3 combos are at least playable. And with everything working together so well and having so many early play options and things like that in these trial decks, definitely recommend picking them up. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I tell people, even with just these 7 trial decks, this set is really a contender in the meta, in my opinion. So, great cards. Thank you for watching. You can check me out on Twitter at BoatsDon'tSink. You can find the store at Iron City Games 1 on Twitter or Iron City Games on Facebook. And you can check us out on TCG Player at ironcitygames.tcgplayerpro.com to get any singles that you need. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in 2 weeks when the booster releases.